Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. We are welcoming several people today to talk about a very serious topic, protecting our kids in today's culture. I think it's no question that our community's been going through something very serious. We welcome Pastor Barry Carter, first of all, no stranger.
Hi, Susie.
And also Rick Schuster. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well. Rick, you are a clinical counselor, yes?
I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of Ohio.
And working specifically with young people, I'm guessing. Do you do some children's counseling?
I do work with young people. In fact, my last 4 adolescent clients were all dealing with some of the issues we're going to talk about today.
So, Pastor Barry, first of all, let's start with you. What caused you to contact Rick and say, we need to do something here?
Well, Rick and I have been friends probably since 1997. We were in Israel together on a tour, and Rick and I's wife and my wife became friends, and I had Rick in to speak to our pastors, local pastors, on how to protect yourself in emotional relationships with clients, counseling, things like that. So Rick came in. While he was speaking, I was thinking about that I really need to bring him in to speak to the school system on boundaries, and we talked about boundaries, and then we shifted to, although that'll still be part of what's going on, but protecting our kids in today's culture. And Rick says, yeah, I'd be glad to be a part of that.
Well, it's very unusual. It really hits a community if one child commits suicide. We have had multiple, and particularly in the Perry school system, just dealing with almost inexplicable number of teen suicides. Rick, what can you tell us as far as what these children were dealing with, how they got to such a dark place where it seemed that this was the only way out?
Well, the material that I'm going to talk about is the bullying side of it. What we tend to see is that we don't really handle bullying very well. And if you talk to some of the experts, they'll say, well, bullying directly does not cause suicide. But if you look at the figures and you look at the reports, actually what happens, the bullying begins to erode those young people's self-esteem, their self-image. It drives them to psychological or emotional issues, being depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorders, those kinds of things. And those, when you couple them up with the bullying, these young people are in some tremendously harmful and hurtful situations.
Why, when someone is telling us something about ourselves that we know not to be true, we believe them instead of what we know to be true?
Well, I think what happens is I've always heard sticks and stones may break our bones, but names will never hurt us. And I say that's wrong. I say that the things that we hear about ourselves, in fact, I don't remember where I heard it. It might have been in one of Pastor Barry's sermons, but for every one negative thing you hear about yourself, it takes 5 or 6 positive things to take you back to a neutral position.
You think when a child is... I was just going to say, when a child is born, they hear nothing but good, right? Let's say the first 5 years of their lives, they hear from mom and dad and grandma and grandpa about what a wonderful kid they are. And then they head off to, school, and there's a playground, and they might hear differently. But you'd hope that they'd had enough filled. Yeah, go ahead.
What we're seeing bullying starting in elementary school and carrying all the way on through high school. And it can come from a variety of issues. It can come from being modeled by their parents. One parent is being bullied. It can come from abuse. It can come from sexual abuse. It can come from a variety of different areas. And we need to address those things. And I'll put it in this perspective. If we had a development with 100 houses in it, and 16 of those houses were broken into, we would be screaming
do something. Yes.
Some kind of action, some kind of change.
Yes.
Right.
Well, when we have a bullying community, 16% of the people that are bullying have suicidal ideation or suicidal attempts. And that's not acceptable.
No, it's not. Are there signs, since you're saying that this begins as early as elementary school, Are there signs teachers should be on the lookout for as to perhaps the child's not being bullied as much there at school, but as you say, perhaps the bullying is taking place inside the home before they ever get to school? What can teachers or other people who work with young people be on the lookout for?
What I would be looking for, and the thrust of my presentation is going to be towards the parents, with some towards the teachers, but the parents really need to be looking for children that have isolated themselves, that are moody, that have lost weight, that are not sleeping. And then when we take it into the school, we'll see children that don't want to take the bus to school. They don't want to take the same route to school. They want you to drop them off. The unsafe places are bathrooms, hallways, any public area where there's not a lot of supervision. So my plea to the teachers is, let's pay attention to those areas and let's make sure that these young people are not being harmed emotionally.
I get taken back to the A Christmas Story and little Ralphie and, Scut Farkas, who was the neighborhood bully, and we laugh. This is absolutely no laughing matter, is it?
It's not a laughing matter. It's detrimental for a very long time. Some of the statistics say that the bully perpetrators actually have at least one, if they were perpetrators in middle school, they have at least one criminal conviction. And depending on where they measure and how they measure, they could have as much as 4 criminal convictions throughout their adult life.
We've always had bullies. But do we live in a day and age where the bully's tools are so much more sophisticated now because we've got everything online and social media where it can just destroy a child if somebody decides they want to? Do you see that this really exacerbates the problem?
Absolutely. What I want to say is we see bullying everywhere. We see it in the political system. We see it on the internet, where if we would read the comments or reactions to some of the news stories, they're terrible comments. Yeah. And I think what everybody has gotten away from is do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kindness factor that has to be there. We don't want to isolate these children. We want to bring them together, make them feel like they're a part of the school community, of their neighborhood community, and we want to help them to heal instead of being afraid to go to school, to enjoy school.
So
the teachers will see an academic drop off for sure.
Your goal then would be to get a child to be able to find their place, their niche right there in the school. I think a lot of times you think, whoa, okay, I'm yanking you out, we'll homeschool from now on. You're saying that's not the answer?
Oh, that could be the answer. It could be the answer to moving to a different school. But the point is we need to recognize the situation. We need to approach the school system, which has a demand by the state educational department to have a bullying policy in place and to implement that policy.
You're going to be... Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And if they are not implementing it or they don't have a good policy, they need to review that and get that to a safer place, a better place.
You're saying that there are some school systems that still don't have an anti-bullying policy?
No, what I'm saying is the state will issue general guidelines for a policy, and the policy is then up to the school system to develop it.
Mm-hmm.
And they develop it based on the criteria of their particular school system. There's a lot of schools that still don't think they have bullying going on in their schools.
I find that amazing. But I guess, okay, that seems naive.
That's what the research says.
Mm-hmm. All right, well then let's go one step deeper. You're going to be talking with parents. You're going to be really focusing on the parent part of it, and I'm guessing a lot of that is going to be trying to discern whether or not your child is being bullied. What about for the parents who need to discern whether or not their child is bullying others? Is there something to help them as well?
We're going to address some criteria for them as well. I'm not sure how many people we're going to have on that side of the equation. The majority, what I'm expecting is the majority of people will be victims.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about victims is after a while, they could turn into a bully
I
themselves.
was just going to say that. I'm wondering if a lot of the bullies hadn't been bullied at some point.
And they have. That's what the research says.
Man, oh man. Okay, what are we going to do on the on Thursday, May 10th? You're going to be doing a session particularly focusing on bullying. Thursday, May 10th, 7 to 8:30, meeting at Massillon Recreation Center. This is free and open to the public, yes?
Yes.
What can we expect to see that night? What's our goal for the night?
Well, I'm going to be focusing on tools for the parents so that they could, number one, recognize if their child is being bullied, assist them in making a connection and keeping an open connection with their child so that they can help that child, not overbearingly charge in the school or do anything like that, but in a respectful manner go ahead and try to eliminate this situation and make it better for their child. Also going to talk a little bit to the school teachers, if there are school teachers there, with some tools for them to pay attention to, maybe a refresher if they have a policy in place. That's great. I don't know how often they've reviewed it or, if they just look at it the first of the year and then push it to the side. So my plea will be, let's stay current on it, let's stay active on it.
I'll throw this out to both of you gentlemen. Back in the day, dads used to teach their kids how to defend themselves. Do we do that anymore, or is that just not allowed to happen anymore?
Well, I'm sure it still does happen, but it's not a good approach to resolving the issue. It could invite additional violence. It could exacerbate the whole situation. We don't need to make things worse. One of the things we need to do is to help that bully take a step back. And a lot of times there's a lot of bystanders. We need to engage the bystanders as well instead of standing around watching the situation to intervene in it.
Let's go there just for 1 minute. Yeah, suppose a child knows that a friend of theirs is really picked on. What is that child to do? Is it okay to tell somebody? Nobody wants to be the tattletale as well.
Well, I would always tell. Mm-hmm. Who would I tell? I would tell someone that I trusted. The worst case scenario is that we tell an adult something, a child tells an adult something, and the adult does nothing or does minimal. Mm-hmm. In the last 4 clients that I had, adolescent men, 3 of them were in bullying situations. One of them actually attempted suicide. And when they went, the reports I'm getting is when they went to their school, they didn't get the kind of reaction, acceptance, and help that they wanted.
First tool you would give a child who is being bullied would be what?
Pardon me?
What would be the first tool you would try to give or teach a child who is being bullied?
I would be moving them towards sharing that information with someone that they trust, talking it through, and helping that child to understand that the gravity of what's happening to them can be changed and will be changed.
And suppose we've got some wonderful teachers in this area, but I have heard of cases where, and I'm sure not here, but cases where actually a teacher joined in on making fun of a child. What do you do in that case?
Well, I think that's one of the things that, again, exacerbated the situation when they see the teachers either bullying each other or bullying a child or using sarcasm. So in that case, I think we need to step into the situation and immediately put that teacher on notice and say that's unacceptable and go right up the chain of command to their supervisor, their principal, their superintendent.
Rick, we certainly appreciate your time. We'll be back after these words with Pastor Barry, and Jane Lewins will be joining us to talk about teen suicide on the other half of this. You're listening to Our Community.